Hello everybody, and welcome to Escape to Books. My name is Sarah, and this is my review of the Thursday Murder Club, the first book in I think it's a trilogy right now. First off, I really enjoyed this book. I loved the place. It was a converted convent. They converted it to it's not a nursing home. It's like an elderly community, like a 55 and up, I would say. The place has a restaurant. It has its own cemetery from its time as a convent for nuns. It's in a rolling farmland that everybody really enjoys in the English countryside. It's all based in that area. I believe it's in our time frame. There were a lot of characters with really cool backgrounds and within the elderly community that form this club. I'll give you a little detail on that. I don't believe that'll be spoilery. So your first character is Elizabeth. I don't know exactly what her background is. She's either a spy, like an international spy, or she's like an ex-FBI, CIA type agent. They don't really clarify too much. She just has a lot of connections within crime, seems like. A lot of people who can get her surveillance, a lot of people who can do paperwork for her, and she is basically the leader of the group. You have a character named Ron, who is a respected journalist. He has a son who's also in this book named Jason, who is an ex-boxer, and now he does, infomercials and stuff like that, kind of like our George Foreman over here across the pond. Then you have Ibrahim, who is I believe still practicing psychiatrist. He still has some people come to him or talk to him at his community. He still has case files and stuff that he goes over, things like that. And then you have a supposedly new character into the club, and her name is Joyce. She was an ex-nurse, and she brings kind of the first doctoral eye to the investigations. A big part of this book is her journaling for the events of the mysteries, and you have a member who is basically invalid at this point. She had, I believe, Alzheimer's. They don't really talk about it too much. She has memory lapses and her health has started to fail, so she is now in a coma. You have a lot of the characters going to see her and kind of talking about everything. She is an ex-police officer. She was in the investigative division, and we know that a lot of these cases that she brought home with her, they're cold cases, and those are the cases that the Thursday Murder Club are highly involved in. They do look at them, and I don't believe that they're always as tumultuous as this first novel here. It is definitely steeped in mystery. There is almost too much mystery in this book. It becomes entangled very quickly. It was one of the reasons that I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars instead of a 5 out of 5 stars. There's almost too much mystery, if that's a thing. You almost need a chart to try to memorize who each person is, because there's at least 5 mysteries in this, I believe, in total, with a lot of side plots that are pertaining to and then not pertaining to. So you have to wheedle through each thing. All in all, I really enjoyed this. The characters are really likable, and they're very personable. They each have their own little nuances. Elizabeth is definitely the ringleader. You can tell that she has basically almost all the answers, and if she doesn't, she does not stop to be like, hey, I don't understand this. She'll just jump in and be like, oh, I have somebody for that. Joyce is kind of keeping everybody together. She's kind of the glue. She stops all the little fights and the infights. She bakes, and everybody kind of goes to her place as not really a shoulder to cry on, but they come to her as like a pick-me-up almost. She's a very joyous person, and she has a little side plot of her own that she's dealing with, but she moves on like a trooper through it all. And then you have Ibrahim. He's the kind of deep thinker in this whole book. He goes through what somebody may have been feeling or thinking, or even into the criminology of something. He's got connections with people who can, look at bones and see how old they are, and they use those connections in this book. You have Ron, who is really outspoken. He's very hot-headed as a journalist from back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s would be. Very up in your face. He is almost the brawn of the group. And then you have the characters around the community. So you have, within this book, you have the men who saw an opportunity for this convent that was being sold, who bought it and made it the community that it is. You have the man that was with him to help build the community from ground level, basically, as a supervisor, and get the part of the cut for the profits. This is almost like a high-end elderly community. They have like I said, their own restaurant. They each have separate apartments. Some of them have smaller apartments. Some of them have whole almost bungalows. You have parks. You have transportations to a couple of towns every few days. Every day is filled up with, Pilates and jigsaw puzzles and whatever they want. But it's not your typical, I wouldn't say it's your typical elderly home as we see it over here in the States. I would say it's a very upbeat. People are pretty active. People are as active as they can be, and things just move forward from there. You have a couple other side characters. I would call them side characters, although they do have a couple of their own chapters. There is Donna, who is a PA, and over in England, I'm not exactly sure what that stands for. I believe it's some kind of lower ranked police officer. She's straight from London, from the high octane of a big city. She wants to go catch criminals now and have things happen, and now she's stuck in this she's been transferred to this little town that really doesn't have anything like that. And then a big murder happens and she wants to be part of it. And the club helps her in a way. There's also her superior officer who she ends up befriending, and the Thursday Murder Club also befriends Chris, and he is a senior investigator, I believe, and he is the one head-fronting the murders within this. I liked how much trouble these elder characters were able to get into and get away with. How Elizabeth's know-how, the spectrum of crime, and the like how her brain works. You don't really see too much of the inner workings of Elizabeth, but you get the sense that she's been around the block and she has seen basically everything. I did come away with this with with a little bit as a reservation. As I said, it was almost a really dense murder mystery because there were so many mysteries. There was not just one, there were multiple main ones, and then there were a lot of fewer ones that kind of interconnected. While it was gripping and entertaining, it was a little almost it was almost too much. But then dumbing down the mystery, I guess, would have been a detriment as well. I still want to give this a 4 out of 5 stars, but also because I think this mystery could have used a little less complication. It took me a while to get my hands on an actual physical copy of this book. I had been looking at it for a while, and I have libbied it a few times to put it on hold, but it's always got such a long wait, and then when I do get it, I'm either in the middle of something and can't get to it, so I let it move on. So I was really happy to get a physical copy. I read this in pretty much 2 days. It is a fun read. It goes pretty quickly from one place to the next. There isn't really any dilly-dallying. I would say the convent and the old church are a big part. And I'm wondering whether in the next book that'll continue. There is, obviously, I believe they just came out with a 3rd book. I don't know if that's where it's going to start or if it's going to continue. They did leave a segue into the next book, but it almost seemed like an afterthought to the segue. I thought that this could have been a pretty good standalone, but I am looking forward to reading the next book. It'll be a completely different thing, that's for sure. I know that these are fictional characters, but my wish is that I'm even a little bit as interesting as these older people are in their later years when I get to be that age. This reminded me a little bit of Red and how, you can't judge an older person just because they're aging. Their minds are just as active as they ever were, and they can always surprise you. So I really enjoyed this book. I hope anybody who has read it will leave me a comment or tell me what your thoughts are on it. If you haven't, get to it. I don't know when I'm going to be getting the 2nd book in the series. I don't know if it's available at the libraries or not. I will be on the lookout for it, and maybe I'll get to it next month. If anybody would like to join me, you got the whole rest of this month to read this one, and come with me on this read along. I also have a Discord, and my Goodreads is on my channel. If you would like to follow, like, and subscribe this video if you liked it, and I hope to see you in the next one. And let's continue to read.